Welcome, everyone. Today, we're flipping the script and putting the spotlight on the woman who's usually asking the questions, Adrienne, the interviewer and voice behind On the Ground. We'll dive into what it's like to be the interviewer, the impact on these conversations, and also highlight this month's special episode on the achievements of women worldwide. Adrienne, thank you for joining us. We always hear you leading great discussions, but today we want to hear your story. Can you start by telling us what drew you to podcasting and interviewing in the first place?
Well, I have been on the air as a radio broadcaster since 1988 on WABC Radio. I was syndicated on Westwood One, and I've also been in front of the camera on CNN FM. So I'm really a long time host. And when podcasting came around, I was drawn to it immediately, and it really has been a lot of fun.
I'm so glad to hear. As an interviewer, how do you prepare for conversations with such diverse guests?
First of all, I do a little bit of research. I ask them for their bio, but then I look them up. I look them up on LinkedIn, on Google. I get some of the inside scoop on who they are. I love to take a look at what organizations they belong to, where they volunteer, and some of the personal as opposed to only the professional side of them. And the rest of it is my curiosity. I simply love to talk to people. I'm always feeling that it's a one-on-one. I'm feeling that right now with the audience that may be watching. And then conversations ensue. So it's easy to do that with anybody, anywhere.
Wow, you seem like such a natural. So what's the key to making an interview engaging and insightful?
Well, I think what people really want to know is what's in it for me. They call it WIFM. What's in it for me? So I always try to ask the guests something that's not only in it for them, but also in it for the audience. And once I am engaging the guests and they're talking about something in which they are deeply interested, everybody else will be interested. And when you add to that some benefits for the people who are listening, it really does make a much better podcast or radio show or TV show or book, by the way.
I definitely think so too. I enjoy listening to the podcast ever since I knew about it, joining GNEC, the GNEC NGO. It's been one of my favorite things to tune in. So having so many episodes up already, has there ever been a moment where an interview took an unexpected turn, and how did you handle it?
Yes. First of all, on our own show, On the Ground, the GNEC podcast, there have been many of those. One or two have been, particularly on the ground, criticisms of policies, criticisms of policymakers. And of course, we're a very positive podcast. What we're about is what's working for you so that other NGOs and other people who are looking to make change and are part of civil society can actually improve what they're doing. So everything we're looking for is positivity, and every once in a while, some real negativity comes in. And so, how do you handle that when what they're doing is really not in keeping with the tone of a podcast like On the Ground? And you have a couple of choices. I mean, you can edit it out. This is the world of editing, but there's an element there of fake news. And I'm a journalist, a New York Times age boom journalist, and I don't like fake news. So I generally ask them something that they don't expect to hear, which is, what do you mean by that? These are really magic words. When you hear somebody say something negative, anywhere, it could be in your own conversation, your immediate reaction is, oh, that's terrible. I'm going to fight back that person, or I'm going to eliminate what they have to say. But then you have to say to yourself, what do they really mean by that? Maybe it didn't come out right in their words. And that is generally my follow-up question, which is, what do you mean by that? And the answers become so wonderful. You'd be surprised that as they begin to think about their own negativity, they come up with what's really bothering them. And what's really bothering them is probably what's bothering you and me. And so then we get into an even deeper conversation. So that's what I've learned to do.
Wow, that's amazing. And what do you think makes a great interviewer, and how have you developed your own style over time?
I would like to say that it's a science and you can learn it, and there are rules and regulations, and there are. But the truth is, I don't think anybody knows. I think you might be born that way in some respects, like Lady Gaga. The thing I liked about school, and it was unfortunately it was in kindergarten, and I've never liked school as much as I did in kindergarten, was show and tell. They would ask you to bring something, and then you would stand up there and you would tell about it. And most of the kids hated this. It was embarrassing to them, and it made them afraid, and so on. I couldn't wait. If you had given me six different things to show up with, and that's what I've discovered from fellow podcasters, radio broadcasters, any kind of broadcaster. They just love it. And it's no surprise that the name of our professional organization is Talkers, because basically that's our profession. We simply are talkers. So put us on a street corner, a camera, it doesn't matter. You just do it because you love to learn. And there are many ways of learning, and one way is to learn from other people. And so that's really what's the motivation. So if you have that, you're probably a good interviewer because you're really interested in what they're asking you and telling you.
That's amazing. And your work on the ground, which is GNEC's podcast, is truly a beacon that demonstrates the impact of the power of storytelling. So thank you for all your work. I just love to tune in every month when a new podcast comes out. And not only that, but you've interviewed some incredible change makers on your
Yes.
podcast. Can you share an interview that deeply resonated with you?
Well, I have to say that they all did. But I will talk about the last two. And that's easy because we were going to have one podcast in honor of uh, looking at the status of women. Now, for those of you who don't know the podcast, what we do is we take one element of what the United Nations is focusing on every single month, and then we interview somebody who relates in some way to that particular element. And this month, in particular, was the status of women. And we were also very interested in doing this because we have a hackathon at GNEC, which is a ways for younger folks, many of them only in high school, to come up with technology solutions to the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. So we're in our hackathon, we're also featuring issues that have to do with gender equality. So we had a twofold reason. We were going to have, as usual, a podcast, but instead we ended up with two podcasts. And I'll tell you why. I sent out invitations and I got two of them, and they were both so good that I just couldn't say no. So one was the League of Women Voters, and one of them was Seroptimist, which is a volunteer organization started in the late 1800s for women to make change, mostly educational change for younger women. And they both brought me back. The reason that I was so enamored with them in particular was a personal one. It brought me back to the 1970s when now National Organization of Women was founded, and Gloria Steinem and the rest of us were out there with placards, and we wanted equality for women. And it was noted by by our guest from the League of Women Voters, who was their general counsel, that the ERA, Equal Rights Amendment, was just ratified during the Biden administration. Hello? Yeah, I know. Everybody's going, what? And actually, it hasn't even been published yet. So one of the things that the United Nations can do is to recognize the ERA in the US as a policy, simply because it has not been published, but it has been passed. With the Seroptimists,
Yeah.
they reminded me that, for instance, Zainuddin was with the UN herself for 36 years, reminded me that that organization started so long ago that I went to a museum in California, in Banning, California, and I saw a buggy, a horse and a drawn buggy with the name Seroptimist on it. So we've been fighting for a very long time for gender equality, and we're still there. And because I fight for the rights of older women, it meant a lot to me. this particular two podcasts, and they really are fascinating. But what they teach you is perseverance. Just don't give up. And that's something hard to learn.
Yeah, definitely. I hear you. And thank you, seriously. Being part of the movements and being part of the action, I think is so essential. And with the podcast, how do you ensure that these conversations don't just raise awareness, but also inspire action?
Actually, I don't do that. You do. By putting them on social media, by putting them in the reporter, there's an issue that my daughter, who's a director, stage director, says, if a play is not performed, it does not exist. Well, today, if a podcast is not posted, it does not exist. So you're the one who does it, not me. Now you got it. Now you're really under pressure.
That's amazing. I love that statement. And what's something that people don't realize about being the interviewer, the one behind the mic? What's something you want people to know about that?
The person who is asking the questions, the interviewer, like myself, yeah. What they may not realize is to be yourself. You really can't be anybody else. If you listen to podcasts, you love your podcast, you love radio, if you love any kind of performance art, because the person you're listening to or watching is an individual. That's what makes them different. They may not be even as talented as the next guy, or as smart as the next guy, or had the education of the next guy, or the fortune of the next guy, but they are themselves and nobody else. I do like it's a very silly statement, but be yourself,
I know.
everybody else is taken. So that's what you need to know.
That's amazing. I love that. Be yourself. And to put the spotlight back on this month's episode, your latest episode featuring Frances Dino Eden discussing women's achievements and gender equality. What stood out to you in that conversation?
Well, as I said, it was the importance of perseverance and how long we've been fighting for that kind of equality. But there's something else new that I did mention the first time. And that was what makes things change. Only the efforts of small groups of people. This is very Margaret Mead for you sociologists out there. Only small groups of people thinking globally and acting locally. We hear that. Think, globally, act locally, but what does it really mean? Well, what the seroptimists have done, basically, is they've divided the world into local chapters. And each local chapter has its own stated mission. They do that. And then when you put it all together, you have a world of change. And we can do that as individuals. If conservation is what's important to you, if world peace is what's important to you, whatever your mission is, whatever you care about, if you do one small thing at home and that catches and motivates somebody else to do one small thing in their home, and this keeps happening, you've made world change. That's the way you have to do it. I guess a better way to say it would be, as you would say in Spanish, poco a poco, little up by little.
That's amazing. Thank you. And what do you hope listeners take away from that episode?
I think the thing that it can be done. I love the phrase, will everybody who says it can't be done get out of the way of the people who are doing it? It's pretty tough, right? But it's true. The
Yeah,
worst, it's not bad enough that a lot of people don't do anything, but they tell others that it can't be done. That's worse.
I definitely agree. But I'm so glad, I'm so excited. I am gonna go home tonight and rehear the podcast for this month. But what's next for On the Ground? Any upcoming topics or guests you're excited about?
Well, there's a couple of things. First of all, as I said, we go month by month by what's being featured by the United Nations. But the thing that I'm most excited about is the fourth hackathon. Now, this is the fourth time we're doing this, and I think it's a great big deal. I'll give you an example. One of the young ladies created an app with regard to one of the Sustainable Development Goals through this hackathon process that we have. And there are two podcasts, which you can go back to, on these hackathons, explaining them completely. But what she created was an app that detects skin cancer on darker skins, because many people of color do not get that detection. Not only does that app do that for someone, but it even gives them health motivation. So imagine that. Then there's a drone that cleans water. I have another podcast, which is The Ageless Traveler, and we're going to Africa. And one of the big problems in Africa is dirty water. And it really cuts down longevity, child health, everything you could think of. Imagine a drone that can clean water. Wow. So this is what I want to take away. This podcast is not just about the guest. It's also about letting people know what GNEC can do. One of them is this fantastic hackathon. Another one is that we have our reporter, where you will get up to date on what's going on in civil society. Another thing we have is conferences and webinars. Again, more information and even free courses. So the podcast is definitely not only about the topic at hand, but we have what I call advertisements, although they're not ads, telling you how GNET can support you. And that's really what it's all about.
Absolutely. And where can people follow the podcast and stay updated on GNEC's work?
Well, first of all, we are disseminated on every single podcast disseminator you can think about: Spotify, Apple, Audible, iHeartRadio. If you're listening to it on any kind of a platform for podcasts, we're there. And it's called On the Ground. So that's number one. Number two is, of course, we have the NGO Reporter, which always mentions what's happening on a case-by-case basis. Then we have the posting on Twitter, X, on Instagram, on LinkedIn. So you'll get that way. So all of a sudden, you've got this one place that you can go that propels civil society with information that they need. And one of the most important things you can do is subscribe to the podcast, because not only do you hear the people I'm interviewing, but you'll get all of the other show notes on the side of the podcast on Apple, Spotify, and so on. That gives you the links to everything that NGO, that our committee is doing.
Amazing. I'm so glad to hear. And definitely, I'll keep spreading the word about the podcast. Adrian, it's been great turning the mic around and hearing your perspective. Thank you for sharing your journey as an interviewer and for all the important conversations you bring to life. And to everyone watching, don't forget to check out this month's episode On the Ground featuring Francis Zino Eden, streaming now. I'm here closing out at City College and I'm so excited. Adrian, if you want to share, where are you being interviewed from?
Well, first of all, I want to tell you that my dad went to school in New York,
Really?
and what a college that is. And if you can see this, if you're watching it on YouTube or on other video, that is a phony background, but it's actually the background that I see out of my window. And I'm in Palm Springs, California, in
Amazing.
the desert, mind you, in the
Um,
desert.
I remember you used to live here in New York and you went to go see the Yankees play in the Yankee Stadium.
Did. And we've been, well, I've lived since, I would say, maybe 30 or 40 years more in New York City, and
Wow,
then parts of New Jersey, back to New York City, and now in the great state of California.
that's amazing. And I assume you've traveled to other parts of the globe. What would be the most exciting place you've ever visited?
Well, I've been to 121 countries,
Wow.
and many of them many, many times. And I disappoint people by saying London, because they don't think that's so exotic. But honestly, I do love London. I feel that I could live there easily. On an exotic basis, it would be Uzbekistan. I really did enjoy spending several weeks in Uzbekistan and Samarkand and Bukhara and Khiva, which is the oldest city on the planet right now. So if I was going to do something exotic again, it would be Uzbekistan. But we're going to Africa this summer for 3 months.
Wow.
And we are actually taking people through the Ageless Traveler to Tanzania and Kenya, and I just last night finished up our itinerary for Uganda and seeing the gorillas. So it's a big deal.
That's so exciting to hear. But thank you again, Adriane. And I can't believe I am closing this out already. I've been so excited this whole week to get to know your story and hear more about you. And I love the work that you're doing. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.